I yap and I talk really fast, so it's 10 minutes, but Toby has a whole thing ready.
All right, Graham, you're the first 20 seconds of my thesis defense recording. I'll get you.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, since Josh has 5 more of these later tonight to go to, we'll launch into this one. I want to thank everybody for being a part of this committee and basically most of you for sticking it out and the other half of you for coming to the rescue as a horrible, unexpected skiing accident caused me to need committee members in a big hurry. That's what we're going with, this skiing accident. So once I can get Punky and the Hammer into the platform, we'll start. If you guys need the address again, I can give it to you in Discord or wherever's clever. But if that ends up
Friend
not
or
working out,
die.
I really want Jeffrey to get in and see his art.
Is
The
he John?
He is John Wizard.
That's great.
The characters are based solely on your hairstyles. I didn't want to invade your personas any further than your, short hair, long hair, shiny, aggressive beard, I think is what I used for John Wizard. And then for Josh, I said Texan and I got aviator sunglasses and a cowboy hat. So I stopped
All
right
right.
there. I just
I think that's
immediately,
yeah.
yeah. Um, let's see. I see Pinky Punkers. And these characters are just
DeLorean.
the Mandalorian. Well, Mandy is full of lore. So to me,
That's
I've been calling her the Mandalorian for a while.
I love it.
She's full of her lore. At this point, she's full of mine. She's got lore of like 7 other major authors she can conjure up. So she's certainly got plenty of Pinckney lore.
oh man. Well, that's yeah. I mean,
Believe
because
influence.
Lord, how long have we known each other, Mandy? At this point,
It's been a bit.
2013.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
A decade.
been
Yeah.
well over a decade. Yeah.
hmm
Dejanay came in today and introduced her to the new staff, and they were like, "Oh, did she used to work here?" I said, "Yeah, she's Pinckney Core, OG Pinckney Core."
She used to share my office with me.
Hmm. Hmm. And these characters are just so vaguely in resemblance to you all that they are plausibly deniable for me if you get mad at me for having them. And the other phenomenon I don't think I talked about in the paper was that when people first try a game like this, when they first try a role playing game where they're going to embody a character and try to be somebody else, they're very often a huge chunk of themselves with their first character. It's sort of a stepping stone thing. When you first try it, your character will think like you or act like you or look like you a little bit. And then the more you play, the more characters you have, the more you tend to deviate from yourself and get way out in left field. Get weirder by the minute. Okay.
It's a good album name. Weirder by the minute.
Weirder by the minute.
Yeah.
We're gonna make some album names tonight with this crowd. I bet we will. Okay. Hammer loading up there. Okay.
Yes.
I want to say into the record that it is Doctor K. Allison Hammer, but I at one point obtained special permission to refer to Doctor Hammer as the Hammer. But that could be revoked at any moment. I may lose it tonight. And I think we're ready to start looking at stuff. If you see a bunch of characters sitting in front of a dude in a green cape, then we're good.
Dude,
Okay.
green cape.
Okay.
Oh, whoop! I was zoomed way far in.
Zoomed way in. Oh, the basics. Hold right click to move, to sort of drag the screen around. You hold right click. If you're on a Mac, it's control and then drag. And scroll in and out to zoom in and out. That's going to be true all evening. Josh is certainly on a trackpad, even though I warned him he should get a mouse. I can tell that he's on a trackpad because he's miscellaneous rolling. He's turned his token sideways. And this is normal. This happens every time we use this platform. It's very complicated, and it can be a little intimidating. I'd say it's like the Microsoft Word of game platforms because it has 200 features you may never use. And you'll accidentally activate them at times. But it's not too hard to fix it. Let's get Josh's cowboy hat upright again. And the first thing I want to show you guys is the thing that I never show anybody, really. It's this. And you want to zoom out so you can see all of this chaos. And if you're on my stream, you can see some things that the participants actually can't see, which is my hidden note system. This is how I plot out a story.
What are we streaming to? What service?
We are just recording.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to upload to YouTube.
Cool.
Given that you and I are both in this channel, I figured the chances that we had to just scrub this recording and pretend this didn't happen were above 0. So we're not live streaming. But this is how I keep things organized in my head. And this is also how you run a complex long-term story for a group of people who can run off in a random direction on you at any moment. So you want to start up here by where your characters are, where I've just made the little pinging icons. And I can, of course, drag everybody's focus over there, too. You want to start here, and in my mind, the most sensible move would be to go to this next area next. But because my players have choice, they can go anywhere. So I am ready to, and oftentimes in my story, I'll end up with branches going in 20 different directions because I have to go where they go. I can't actually, other than destroying the table, I can't make them go anywhere. I have to make them want to go. So you work a lot with motivations, and then you kind of hope for the best. But in this case, I am going to railroad you, which is in the glossary. I'm going to force you to look at the macro examples first. And you want to zoom out to where you can see these 2 black glass cards with a bunch of gibberish on them. And these are some of the accessibility macros. And if you go over to the chat prompt, which is over here where I'm typing gibberish in right now, and click there, you can use these commands. And this is how blind play is accomplished. If you type /CLM, you will perform a climb check. And it should report the results only to you. You should hear a sort of robotic computer voice.
Natural 20. Roll out.
Unless you roll a natural 20 and then it yells in everyone's ear. Good job, Jeffrey. Thank you. So this method, the reporting to you is private because the rest of the group doesn't need to hear it. It is purely for the non-sighted player. And everyone else can see your result because typically public roles in this game are public. But this enables the player to do private roles. You can do any of these skills. /PER for perception is used all the time. Every time a character walks into a room, they want to roll a perception to hear what's going on in there. Every time they want to do something sneaky, they're going to roll a stealth check. Every time they try to pick up something heavy, they'll do a strength check. There's sort of a mechanism in the game for everything.
24.
Hell yeah. And yeah, see, I report the level of detail based on what they roll. So if they roll terrible, if the whole group, if the highest perception in the group is like 15 or so, then I'm going to actually limit the information I give them, which is hard because I want to give them all the information in the room. I wrote it. I took the time to create it and know it.
18.
And then I have to withhold because Mandy rolls nothing but ones sometimes. She just does.
It's true. It's perfect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I actually have stats on all of my players for the last year and a half, and everyone rolls a clean 10.9 on a 1d20, which is the mathematical average, except Mandy here, who rolls a 10.7.
She's a real weed.
She's literally reliably rolls lower on an electronic random number generator. Magic. And she still plays well.
Thanks.
So these are the macros, and I'll give you some other ones that are sort of interesting. You can do /ally 10.
Anvil, 9 feet north. Dock, 10 feet northeast.
Yeah.
Spectator,
You can do
10 feet east.
/ALLY 10. No spaces in it. I just demonstrated it in chat if you want to try it. This tells you friendly targets that are nearby. There is also foe 10. And there are also 25, 30, 50 versions of this. So my blind players can, without having to ask anybody, just use these commands and get reports of exact locations of everybody on the board. They can also ask me. Everybody can. And I report with information constantly. But the goal of this system is that the non-sighted player is able to do everything the sighted players are able to do without assistance, so that they have command of it. And also because there's random dice involved, I want Josh, for example, my blind player, to, if he's going to roll a 1, I want him to roll it. So he's mad at himself, not me. You know? It's his own agency, and he takes the blame or the credit for whatever he does that way. So these are the accessibility controls, some of them. There are many more. There's even one for all of your weapons and stuff, but I don't think we need to get into that too far.
Okay, and just I believe I know the answer to this, but I just want to check in with you. This is not part of the default platform, right? This is, you have invented all of these systems.
Yeah, the macros are, I want to say we're up to maybe 150 or 170 very small programs. And it got to be so many that I got tired of managing them all, and I wrote a program to manage them all, or to help me do that. So now Josh and I can sit down and let's make a whole new character. I'm tired of being Batman. I want to be Superman. And I tell my macro writing program to go create all of Josh's macros for Superman. And then Josh has total control of Superman, and we play. It takes around 35 seconds for the macro to write 200-ish programs. It's really cool. It's incredibly fun to rope him into it, because he's roped me into all kinds of questionable musical behaviors. So that's the basics of the accessibility system, and you can use it for the rest of this demonstration. You can either go up to your buttons at the top. You see you have buttons that say inventory, it say combat, savings throw, ability. You can look in your inventory. That's all your stuff, handpicked by my players and some MFAs that you know. They wanted to give you a bunch of random junk that they enjoy using. And actually, we should probably play with those for a minute. While we're on this screen, if you'd like, go up to your inventory at the top, which is a button between ability checks and features. And you all have different stuff. You have weapons that I wrote, or a mix of me and other things wrote. Pinckney knows about Spacebone. I didn't include Spacebone in the thesis. It's an AI that I put hundreds of pages of my own writing in, and it writes items in-game like me, which saves me an immense amount of time. And it's fun for the players to goof around with. But you have items, and you can activate them from the inventory. So if you would, everybody just test really anything. Josh has already shot somebody. I figured a Texan would go straight for the guns. Of course, Mandy loves her swords.
I do.
I recognize that.
Yep.
Sound of my boyhood.
Yep. And my God, Mandy. Jeffrey, you also have spells. If you go to your... There we go. That's one of Anna's favorite items.
Welcome to Ethanita Sibomaskata, Kitarin Basilke, Lightning Bolter.
Jesus Christ, Oberyn.
Josh, did you just trigger that? And
I don't think so. If I did, I'm sorry.
oh no, I don't know how it got triggered. Well, there you go. John Wizard, for example, try your fireball. You'll have to, when you click fireball, it's a explosion, and the platform will, and this is built into the platform, help you place exactly where you want the fireball to go. So the tactical combat of this is complicated. It's chess, it's not checkers, which is a little intimidating at first, but there we go, there's a fireball right on top of it. There's James Hetfield for your fireball. Okay, so if we can move on to the wreck. I told you guys I'd run you through a quick demo here. This is what it's like to move around in confined spaces in the game. And you can see that your characters can only see around a small room here. You should be able to move your character either by dragging with the mouse, or you can use the W, S, A, and D keys on your keyboard, or your arrow keys. And so in this way, it is very much like a video game, and the blind accessible version of this is chat commands that move you either north, south, east, or west. Jeffrey's just fireballed everyone in a high oxygen environment. You all explode immediately. Perfect.
Typical.
I knew I could count on you, Jeff. So the movement controls for blind accessible folks are /move, and then you put the distance you want to go and the direction, north, south, east, or west, or northeast, southeast. You can do that. And if you guys head over here to the door, you can click the door and open it. So this is how the platform lets you handle enclosed spaces, but you can tell a story here. You can see there's bits floating around that tell you that gravity is not functional. There's flashing lights. You hear ambient sound effects of the ship sort of creaking and rolling, and you know that you're in danger. I'll turn on a light here so you guys can actually see. And Mandy, if you'd open a door for them to... All I want you guys to do for this is spacewalk to the bridge, which I will spoiler you is a little to the east. And once you get out of the force field in the air pocket, there will be no sound. You'll see that the potato is already out here. I believe our potato tonight is controlled by Graham. And these environments with the visual elements, the sound elements, we do get kind of immersed. I hope we do, at least. On our good days we do. And people get upset, people laugh, people cry, people get mad at me and complain. We get invested in these stories, and it's...
And so where
yes.
where does like the spaceship asset come from?
This spaceship, I put the... you guys probably can't see it too well. If you come on out here, I'm going to drag you out here, Pinckney.
Okay.
But this comes from a Patreon artist that I subscribe to named CZ and Piku. And I get some of my art from artists like this who specifically designed this sort of environment. And they don't really have a plan when they make it. But this is actually the same spaceship I used for my first year of MFA, the Albatross. This is the wrecked version of it, of course. And I'm going to hustle you guys this way. Here's Josh and Oberyn. Drag you guys along. But as you move through the space like this, there are audio cues that you don't see. You hear when you get close to him. As soon as you go through this force field, you should hear the atmosphere around you again. And hear the ship creaking again because there's air to transmit sound to your ear. There's doors. There's a room where everything's shorting out and looks dangerous. There's a hallway. If you get up to the end of the hallway here, we'll complete this segment and move on. And you can tell that in the bridge of the spaceship, they have on some disco lighting and they're listening to Peach's F the Pain Away. Which is one of my favorite environmental audio sounds I have. Okay. Success. So we got that. The next thing we think about is if you will double click your faces, double click your sheets, you will see, let's see, Olbert, you need a character out here. Is there a potato on this screen? We need a potato. There you go.
I'm having to load back in. There
Okay.
we go.
So as you load in, at the very top, there's a summary tab. And the next tab over is attributes. Attributes. If you look at that, then this is how I talk about in the thesis that this is not a thing that's polite or kind to even do in real life to, famously Facebook got started as rating people 1 to 10 or something really rotten like that. But in the game, we have to have balance. We have to have characters with similar overall power levels, even though their capabilities can be completely different. We want them to be completely different. We really want diversity, but then your chess piece can still only move 3 hops, just like everybody else on the board. So these numbers are how we constrain people. They may not look like it, but all of your stats are very different, but numerically they're equal. So one of you has a huge strength and not a lot of dex. Someone else has a very high intellect but a low wisdom, etc., etc. And when we put together a sort of team, you want like a Guardians of the Galaxy, like Avengers sort of thing where everybody's different. That way everybody gets to do things that nobody else gets to do and they get to feel kind of special.
And can you?
Yeah.
And I know you're making your presentation now, and I don't mean
No,
to
interrupt.
But can you talk about? I mean, that strikes me as a really important principle of narrative, right? But can you talk about like how did you derive or decide that was true, that you didn't want like 6 mushroom people or whatever, like how what examples can you cite or like what influenced that decision on your part?
We used to leave this up to chance. For your strength, intelligence, whatever, you would roll dice. You'd roll 3d6, so you could have anything between a 3 and an 18. And as you sat down at the table, me and Mandy and Graham make characters. Well, I roll dead average. All my stats are like 10 to 14s. And Mandy does what she does when she's really feeling it and gets like all 8s. This limits her ability to shoot a gun, to fly a spaceship, to search an area, to be sneaky and powerful. And then Graham just goes nuts and rolls all 16s and 17s and is basically Superman. This is how you end up with Thor and Hawkeye in the same party. And most games have abandoned that. That's 20 years ago. Most games now allow you a system of assigning stats that is equal throughout. Everybody gets, like if you add up all 6 of them together, it comes out to basically the same. And we are just all sort of, most games have moved to something like that at this point. Because it's fairer. And these things are very long term. I once rolled a character that was mediocre. It's the nicest thing I could say about him. And I knew I would be stuck with him for a campaign that would last 2 or 3 real life years. We were going to play every other Saturday for years, and I knew it. And he was mediocre. So I made sure he died a horrible death early, and I re-rolled.
Well, so can you talk to me a little bit about that longevity then, right? Because that isn't the way most narrative, well, I mean, maybe that's unfair to say. I don't know how many people play D&D. But what we think of as conventional narrative, right? Bounded narrative, deterministic narrative. I'll read a novel and I'm a slow reader and don't take a lot of time with it. So, it'll take me to get through, Lord of the Rings is easily 6 months, right?
Yeah.
So, but generally speaking, a conventional modernist novel will take me a week,
Right.
2 weeks. So how does that change the relationship to narrative? The idea that, that potentially these people, you are with these people, the fictional people and the real people, for the next 3 years. And
Yeah.
what kind of considerations does that uh, put into a narrative that you wouldn't put into a narrative that was of a conventional length?
The norm to D&D players, what we really want when we're running into people and meeting people and saying, hey, should we start a table together, is long term. We're looking for long term commitment. We don't want to. The game is designed to be played over months and years. So we don't want to play once and then go, that was boring, and not do it again. My players for all these tables have been with me for years at this point. And that's what we want. The narrative is going to be a long story. It's going to be, like you say, more Lord of the Rings, less airport novel, And so it's going to take some time to get through. Also, the game is designed, the mechanics of the game are designed to make you weak and inexperienced and kind of mediocre at the start. But after you've been playing for 5 or 6 months, you gain skill, you gain power, you get some cool equipment. Josh's character just gets more guns, and you feel more powerful, and it gets more and more fun. And my Josh, at one point, they were in a campaign they had played. I'd run for 3 years of real life, and they wanted to start over at level 1 because they missed being little losers, and they were tired of being super powerful. And Josh didn't want to go back because he was loving being super powerful. That's the game side of it. The people side of it is you get attached to each other. You become friends. You're hanging out all the time. You got potlucks, and you feel like a team whether you're playing the game or not. You get mad at each other like a family or like a band. I like it, but it feels the most like a band to me. Like, oh, the guitar player's late again. Let's kick his ass. It's a long-term commitment, and everybody's kind of required. Not everybody, but you need 80% of the table there to do anything. And in the paper, I try to liken it to, it's more like theater, because my friends in theater tell me that every theater performance is unique. Ian McKellen on Monday night is not the same as Ian McKellen on Tuesday night necessarily in the same play. There's variables here. And so you really have to be there. Whereas all the movies I love, I can watch on loop ad infinitum because I can. That's how that medium works. But this one, it requires everybody to come together, which is a pain in the ass.
That was something that I noted, and I don't remember if it was Everything is Computers chapter, maybe chapter 4. So like this is kind of a circuitous question, but classically, sort of when we're talking about narrative in literary circles, one of the things that's talked about is that reading books, reading novels can make people more empathic, right? Because this is an exercise of imagining yourself in someone else's shoes. And a lot of game study scholars, even Burgos, for instance, they've extended that argument to games, right? The logical being you step into the foot of an avatar, and maybe there's more capacity there. But I find this argument interesting, right? And this is obvious if you've played games, but I hadn't really thought about it before. That really the fundamental difference between this kind of narrative as opposed to a TV show, a novel, whatever, is that if I want the narrative to progress in those mediums, what I have to do is choose to progress in it. Keep watching, press play, read the book.
Yep.
This medium doesn't bend to you in that way, right? So if those other mediums have the capacity to make us more empathic, then what I mean, have you thought about that? Sort of what's at stake here?
Yes.
I have some ideas for reading your chapters, but that was the part that was the most interesting to me. Is like,
Yeah.
like what to do for us as people.
I think I forgot to include it, but I meant to include a quote from the great D&D scholar Brennan Lee Mulligan, who's just a GM and a comedian, and a former college professor, I hear. So he says that the empathy develops between the player and their character. I've given Hammer this character named Anvil, and they have the same hairstyle, but they could be completely different in every other conceivable aspect. And so in order for Hammer to play Anvil, Hammer has to get outside of themselves and get into Anvil and decide, you like this, you don't like this, you believe in this, you don't go for this. And so inherently playing this game, unless you're playing a person who is just exactly you have to engage empathy from the jump in this game, just like an actor does, jumping into a role. But I think it's a lot harder to get a role in your community theater or on a Hollywood film than it is to get a D&D table. So basically what I'm saying, Josh, is if everyone in the country was forced to play D&D, they'd have more empathy.
Well, I like that answer, Ray, because it's not just an opportunity presented by the story; it's actually like a precondition for playing in the first place, right? That
Yeah.
you
And that's why I said when people first, like, your first character in this game is going to be a little like you. Maybe it has your sense of humor, but looks completely different. Maybe whatever. But the longer people play, the weirder they get. I think Enrique's in the channel here, and he will kill a character every couple months just to start a new one. And his characters don't have an ounce of common DNA. They're so different. And he's different every time. And it's always really impressive to see him kind of just transform every time into a completely different entity.
I have just one other question, and obviously you told me to read chapter 5, and I did. I read the other stuff too, though. I actually really liked it. Um, I think a lot about now, especially after seeing Holly's talk on Monday and some of the conversations we've had. You know, in academia, we think a lot, or we talk a lot about accessibility and thinking of accessibility as more than just a problem or accommodating someone in a classroom that it's a problem, right? And the way you talk about accommodations in this is it's very different, right? And so what can we learn more or less in the act and in the reasons to do accommodations well in a classroom from the way these games accommodate players of sort of all stripes, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
It's true of everyone, but Josh, my blind player, is my favorite example, which I use in the paper because all I had to do to get Josh to play when we were all at the table was get him Braille dice. And the reason in my mind, I was like, I got to get him his own dice because I don't want him to be mad at me when he rolls bad. I want him to be, could be mad at yourself. You rolled a 1. And that's the ground floor of agency, him having the same controls and the same experience as everybody else. And then when we went digital, it just got so much more complicated to deliver the same experience, not just to him, but to everyone. People had bad internet, bad computers, and bad everything. And this has been a technological fight to get from early COVID quarantine to where everybody logs into this platform now, I hope, and has fun and understands how it works. And there's muscle memory now. Josh has all of his stuff working. They know where their buttons are, and they just get into character. That's the goal, is that they can just forget about the interface and play, which is the goal of any video game also. They want you to get so used to the controller, so used to the mouse and keyboard that you're not thinking anymore. You're becoming the person. And VR, of course, is the best tech at full human immersion. But it's expensive and difficult to set up, and it's still developing. It's coming along nicely, but to do it on a thing like this, it requires a lot of work. But I feel like we're there. And like I said in the paper, this really helped me at work as I was trying to help you guys, my faculty colleagues, figure out how to teach remotely. Pinckney's like, oh, I got a webcam and it looks like crap. And I'm like, well, let's get some lights and let's reposition the microphone and let's.
And it turned out it was just me who looked like crap. So I'm not particularly grateful to you for that revelation, but okay.
It was a lucky parallel to me. The same technique and the same technology that I needed for D&D helped me a lot at work.
And I think that's sort of what I see, Ray, is that normally when we talk about accommodations in a classroom, we're thinking like, okay, we have this accommodation we have to hit for a legal purpose. And do we have the technology? Do we have the capability? Are we able to do it? And that's sort of the problem, right? Are we able to meet the accommodation? And in these spaces, the problem is I want this player in this space and they're not there. How do I get them there? Right.
Yeah.
And the problem is always the desire to have that player there and to enable them there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it just flips the priority. And there's never a question, like in the way you talk through it, that you're going to make it work.
Yeah.
Because it's the goal is to get the player in the space. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the way that's talked about a lot in chapter 5.
I'm lucky there because that's rooted in my friendship with Josh. And everyone sees me busting my hump to write a bunch of dumb programs so he can play D&D, but Josh is that helpful in the music world. He's musically educated, has a degree from SIU in it. And so every time I didn't have it, we're in a band together, and every time I didn't have the answer to something, what is this? What is that? He answered. So he demonstrated exactly how to raise me up to not be such a brick in the band. And so what we do in the game now is get everybody up to a par. And that's I'm not as educated a feminist as I would like to be, but I believe that's the main tenet of feminism. Is just it's not be better, it's get equality. More discussion. There's not that much more to demo, so if you guys have any more questions or thoughts, we can just launch right into that phase.
Those are my questions, but I'll cede the floor to other people.
Okay. Dead silence. Awkward. I can put some music on.
Do you have a favorite part to design between all the items and the maps and all that stuff?
I get sick of every part of it, and then I run to the other parts, which is why it's important to stay several weeks ahead. This is like writing a serial TV show, because you've got to stay ahead of the actors and the director. Like me, when I'm running the session, as Hammer pointed out, the GM sounds more like the director, and then I'm also kind of the screenwriter. So the screenwriter has to put in enough prep. And sometimes I will admit that I get sick of writing like bad guys and plots and schemes, and I just write stupid, powerful magic items. That's where Spacebone came in. I'll write this glowing axe down here. I had a glorious couple of days writing that. And I'll just kind of go off on tangents. My ADHD takes over. But ultimately, Foundry saves it all, organizes it for me, keeps it in one place so that none of my sort of running off in this direction ever burns me too bad. It all goes into the game eventually. And if my players rebel and go around or ignore content, I copy paste it and put it in front of them again.
Very good. Here's the axe.
Uh-oh. Lately, I've been enjoying writing the cinematic moments, which are linked to in the paper if you haven't seen them. But I killed my girlfriend the other week, and it was glorious. I loved every minute of it. And I brought her back to life pretty quickly. Softy, cupcake GM, I know. But it was a big cinematic experience, and Foundry provided me the audiovisual tools in 11 labs, and just the technologies combined. I can create anything I want. And I can set it up in a gamified way so that they play through all of it. They role play all of it. They decide every inch of it after that. And I can also do it in such a way that there's like a moment in time and a focused scene plays that I'm completely in control of. So control kind of goes back and forth.
How do I punch Pinckney?
You'd go to your combat tab at the top left, your buttons. You don't have to open your character sheet. And you would, under weapon attacks, you would click punch. You would click normal. Pinckney is graciously moved directly into the line of fire. And unfortunately, you rolled a 1, so you miss. And he's wearing sort of an armored spacesuit that has Doc painted on the chest, which just as you're punching him, you think, who writes Doc on their own chest? Like they have to announce that they're a doc. Only like a medical doctor would be so arrogant and so just desperate for the status, you know. Josh's cowboy hat doesn't say Dr. Josh on the top of it, so. Spectators trying to sneak attack people somehow, yeah. there's no other questions, I'll meet you guys at PK's. It's fine. I can be there
Okay.
by like 5. Not you, Pinckney.
Yeah. Have I
Be like-
mentioned
Be
that
there in
I'm
spirit.
at the School of Medicine in Springfield?
I literally painted it on your chest to remind
Yeah.
you.
No,
To remind you.
I really appreciate that. I love
Oh.
I love that it says doc with an exclamation point. That's very special.
Yeah.
Well,
So
so I have questions. I mean, but they're more sort of like fan questions than they are like technical questions. I mean, I suppose the and I I'm not the chair of this defense, so I won't but our goal in an MFA defense, right, is to um, I mean, I think the way it's stated, like in the operating paper or wherever such things are stated, it's that we have to determine that you are capable of producing a full length work of fiction that is of publishable quality. Yeah. And so I guess I would ask you, since I mean, in the last 35 years, the time I've played D&D has been with you, right? So I'm no expert, but what is the equivalent of that, if there is one? What is an MFA D&D writer able to do, or what should we be looking for?
Almost nothing. I thought about this and I realized exactly how sort of avant-garde or niche this art is. There are ways to reach the masses. A couple of my how-to videos for this form, or some of my humorous videos, have reached into the millions of views. So on TikTok and YouTube, I'm producing D&D content, but that's mostly the short form stuff. The only people who watch the long form stuff that we do is mostly the players who are in it, who want to go back and see who stole that 5 gold from them. If you said I really want to actually publish a book and get paid and do this as a job, you would go work for one of the gaming companies and you would write game module books or game rule books or source books, which is really like Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings and then he wrote Unfinished Tales as backstory. And there are legions of people who just write backstory for these games. And that's a cool gig. That would be a fun job. You would love that job. Mandy would love that job. I think Josh and Hammer would be great at that job. It's just deepening the lore or starting a world of your own. So I think probably the pinnacle of this could be publicly GMing for a large audience, the way, Matt Mercer and Mulligan and Abria and Lavely and people like that do. But I have this weird, I'm completely satisfied running it for 6 people, and I don't care if the other 8 billion on the people on the planet ever see it.
Okay.
I get out of it every day
that's
thinking, I'm gonna make so and so cry this week.
No, I think that's. I mean, I more and more I like and understand that choice of artists, for musicians to, mostly play for their friends. For, like there's a communal quality that you've adduced earlier that I think is antique, right? I think it's part of our deep past, when stories were shared among, families or tribes, relatively small groups of people. But the one of the things, I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I'm going to be giving the College of Arts and Media keynote at their upcoming symposium on AI and the arts on April 11th.
Cool.
Yeah. So, but one of the things, sort of the central thesis of that talk, I'm talking about deterministic narrative and non-deterministic narrative. One of the reasons that deterministic narrative, right, a conventional book, a conventional film, a conventional TV show, it's much easier to commodify and industrialize the production of deterministic fiction, right? And that doesn't mean just because it's easier to commodify. Most people, of course, consider deterministic narrative the only legitimate sort of narrative, right? There's an authority figure who creates an arc, a story through which you follow that character, observe that character, empathize with that character, and so on and so forth. But there is this other strain, right, of non-deterministic narrative, but it gets ignored because you can't commodify it, or if you do commodify it, you're commodifying creating the elements of it, right? Like creating the source book or the dice or something like that. So I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm in a way, I think I'm just trying to work out this thesis, for in April. But like, is there a way to commodify this? Not the source books, but this actual experience of creating or is it just always going to be a niche, uh, a niche interest?
Well, it's made me a pretty good amount of money. During COVID, all my music income evaporated overnight, and I did this at night, 3 or 4 tables a week, and it was more income than I was making on music, and I really needed it at the time. It was a lifesaver. As you know, we all work for the state of Illinois, so you got to have a side hustle, and it did make me money through that period. I was as astonished as anyone. But for the last year or so, I haven't really worried about making money off of it. I've been better off and haven't needed to.
Sure.
But I wanted to say about the longer form, like a fiction, like a short story. There's a short story in the thesis that I attached, and I write these periodically, or I make the little lore dump videos, which some of those are in the 500,000 or 600,000 views on YouTube. If I really worked at that, I could monetize those, I suppose. But I usually write a short story or those lore videos as backstory, as motivation for my players to go do a thing. Here's a villain backstory. You should go deal with him or redeem him or kill him. And then the one that's in the paper is written as a result of the player choices that have happened in the campaign for the last 3 years. It started out as just a gothic horror pursuit, let's go kill some vampires. And it ended up being completely and totally about slavery and fascism. It got some really big, powerful themes to the point where I was waking up in the middle of the night writing stories about it. And so they aren't supposed to read that story yet, but some of them have, and they'll just have to separate in their heads. It's spoiler for the end, but it's the outcome we want. It's the freedom from slavery outcome that they pushed me towards. I was just going to let them kill vampires and zombies. They made it a crusade, and I'm with them. I'm going with them to the end on that. And that's what that story is about. So I think I could monetize it. I could write a source book. I could go apply for a job at these companies, and at the moment I don't want to. And as far as a coherent product, 3 hours a week for 3 years. I've produced 5.5 weeks, if you ran it all at once, of story content for 20 players. And I feel great about that. Even though it's the dorkiest thing I've ever done.
It's pretty dorky.
So follow up a little bit on Pinckney's question.
Yes, sir.
So I know we're talking kind of crassly about commoditization and but so you have both the accessibility features that we were talking about today. Is there a way that those could be shared more broadly? Actually, there you go. I'll just close my question there.
The macros that I write for Josh have always been packaged into a mod that I give away for free. I have for about 2 years since I first made them. So, and I make sure they're labeled macros for the blind, in case there's another D&D table out there that's like, gosh, I wish Bob could play, but we don't know how to begin to set this up. They can just click a button, download everything that I've done, and use it immediately. And I like it better that way. I guess I could have sold it, but how many visually impaired D&D nerds are there? Not enough. I'm trying to make more of them, not, an army of them, says Spectator.
That could be construed as a threat.
For you, Jeff, I think it is.
We're about an hour here. Are there other questions, or Cody, are you able to put the committee into sort of a chat together? We just
Directly beneath this one, there is a channel called Serious Business.
Oh.
And you just need to click Serious Business, and you will go into that channel. And if any of my people follow you, I will ban them from the server for a month.
All right, we'll jump into Serious Business for about 2 minutes, and then we'll be back up. All right, thank you, sir.
Well, I'm not seeing Serious Business.
It's right under the last couple names. If you might have to scroll down a bit because there's so many people in the channel.
Okay.
I can move you if you're ready.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna drag you, Hammer. Poof. Okay, they're gone. You can read now. You can click whatever buttons you want. You can, you can absolutely scream.
Oh.
I just want to read real bad.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm trying not to interject, so I have been keeping my lips zipped.
You look like the 4th of July.
First, he must tuntum dias hartum daikikatai klabasensi, lightning bolty.
What is going on with the Oberon spells? I do not understand.
That's what it was earlier. I tried to trigger lightning bolt. I wanted to shoot a lightning bolt for the crowd.
I bet they have they do have their foundry windows still open. They're all hearing that lightning bolt now. What the hell is going on?
No one use 11 labs.
Ooh, no, don't. Tater. Hey, Tater, by the way, I don't know if you guys know this, but Tater can cast mirror image, so Tater can do this if you want to see it. Pretty amazing.
Wait, do it again. I just missed. Fuck.
Take a look at Tater.
Okay. Oh, why is it? Oh.
Because it's got mirror image.
That's cool.
You've seen R and Vrood do it, but you haven't seen Spectator.
Yeah.
Bag of taters.
If you look, Spectator, if you guys looked at Tater's class build, is one level
is humanoid.
Tater of the Grave, Arcane Tater, Tater Disciple, Eldritch Tater Knight, Hell Tater, Shackles Pyratato, Tato Dancer, and Tater Thurge. Pretty awesome. I have too much time in my hands. It's pretty
Apparently.
Cool. Yeah.
Foundry is working way too well for you.
Really I love that for you.
Thanks.
Uh-huh. They're really taking a hot second.
I imagine they're figuring out procedural
user
to expel me and seeing if maybe I can get jail time as well.
I'll help you run away.
Well, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Hey, where are you
I bet they're just over there reeing in the chat.
That's what
don't expose us.
Okay,
the warden
team.
will say.
Back to fake professional mode. The gang's coming back in. I'm going to just drag them in since they're not used to Discord. Okay, I think everyone's back in the channel.
So.
All right.
You want to do the honors here?
Yeah, absolutely. Kelvin, the committee has unanimously...
Whoa. 1 second.
What?
What?
Your internet has
What's
sucked
wrong?
up half a gallon of helium.
Yeah, it has.
I don't know what you mean.
Okay. I think he's
I
using
sound
a
normal to
modulator.
myself.
Oh man.
You're going to love the recording later. Proceed. Do it.
Okay, well, your committee has unanimously agreed that you are deserving of the august title of Master of Fine Arts. And so good for you. You're now double gobble of one of us.
Gobble.
Double gobble.
Could not be more appropriate.
I'm gonna send you this recording, dude. I thought you were messing around. I thought he's using a goddamn voice modulator and my stupid. Oh,
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that.
You wouldn't do that? Yes, you would. Well, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. This was very entertaining, and I've loved seeing all this develop over the years.
And I'm small part that I can be in this, Toby. I'm proud to be. Really, but you deserve it.
This I know you. Some of you guys are filling in, but I feel pretty lucky. I didn't have to pick anybody that doesn't really belong on this committee. Like Josh, you deal with gamification. Hammer used this technology with Graham in class last year, and I think people really liked it. Graham did a great job GMing that, and Jeff has impeccable nerd credentials. I won't out him by describing all the ways that Jeff is a giant nerd, but he's earned it. And of course, Mandy and Pinckney were with me. Mandy almost since day one with the methodology table. By the way, Mandy, this was the original spaceship that you guys earned at the end. I don't know if you noticed that, but that's the.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was.
I love it.
We broke it in half, but that's it. So, I couldn't be happier with the people that have overseen this project, and at least by the committee, I have felt encouraged and supported and assisted the entire way.
And Mandy, like learning that you roll a die statistically significantly different that mathematics would predict is something I'll remember.
It's true.
With stats and numbers and real giant amounts of data, I can prove that Mandy Jordan is built different.
AKA cursed.
Yeah.
Well, that just gives the writer more fuel for this story. She's got plenty of tragedy to write about every week.
Yep.
Well, thanks. I guess we can release everybody to.
Congratulations.
I'll see you all on Escape
Congrats.
from Tarkov. Thank you.
Yep. Great.
See you,
A
Toby.
pleasure. Good to see everybody. Thank y'all.
No opinion. Yeah.
Bye-bye.